The storm had been chasing her all evening. Heavy drops of rain slapped the cracked pavement, washing away the glow of the city's neon lights into a blur of pinks, greens, and golds. She pulled her coat tighter around her body, but it wasn't just the cold that made her shiver, it was the sense of being followed. Lena ducked into the narrow alley between two forgotten buildings. The place smelled of damp brick and rusted pipes. Water streamed down the walls, dripping steadily into the puddles that mirrored her reflection in 100 broken pieces. She leaned against the wall, her chest heaving, trying to quiet her breath. That was when she saw him. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness at the far end of the alley. Tall. Broad-shouldered. His coat was soaked through, clinging to him, but he moved as though the rain didn't matter. His gaze caught hers, intense, unwavering, unreadable. Her first instinct was to run, but something in the way his eyes held hers rooted her in place. A dangerous calm radiated from him, as though he had been expecting her. "You shouldn't be here," his voice was low, husky, carrying easily over the storm's roar. Lena swallowed hard, her throat dry despite the rain. "Neither should you." He took a step forward, water splashing beneath his boots. Her heart thudded painfully, yet she didn't back away. Every nerve in her body screamed caution, but there was something magnetic about the stranger, something that drew her in. The storm seemed to close in around them, the world shrinking until only the two of them remained, their breaths misting in the cool night air. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. His lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a secret only he understood. He stepped closer still, and now she could see the sharp lines of his jaw, the dark strands of hair plastered to his forehead, and the glimmer of rain sliding over his cheekbones. "What makes you think I want anything?" he asked softly, but the heat in his gaze betrayed him. The silence between them grew heavy. Lena's pulse raced in a rhythm that matched the pounding rain. She told herself to move, to break the spell, yet her body betrayed her. She stayed. A gust of wind rattled the alley's metal fire escapes. Thunder rolled. And then, without warning, he was closer, so close she could feel the warmth of him beneath the soaked fabric of his coat. "Why are you following me?" she demanded, her voice trembling between fear and something she didn't dare name. His hand brushed against the wall beside her, boxing her in without touching her. The nearness sent a shock down her spine. "Because," he murmured, his breath mingling with hers, "you stepped into the wrong storm. And now, you're part of it." The words made no sense, yet they made her tremble more than the cold ever could. Every instinct told her this man was dangerous. But every beat of her heart told her he was impossible to resist. Lena tilted her head, her lips parted as if to argue, but the words tangled and dissolved in the humid air. He didn't touch her, not yet, but the space between them was charged, electric, as if the storm itself had crawled beneath her skin. Somewhere deep inside, she knew her life was about to change. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to run from him or run straight into his arms. The rain fell harder, soaking through Lena's coat until the chill reached her skin. Yet standing before him, she barely noticed the cold. His presence burned like a flame in the downpour, daring her to step closer even as instinct warned her to keep her distance. "I don't believe in accidents," she said finally, forcing strength into her voice. "If you're here, you came for a reason." His dark eyes held hers, unwavering. "Maybe I did." The alley seemed smaller with every heartbeat, the storm pressing them together, the shadows closing in. Lena's breath hitched as he leaned just slightly nearer, the rain dripping from his jaw and landing on her collarbone. She had never seen anyone look at her this way, like she was both a mystery to solve and a secret he already knew. "Who are you?" she whispered. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her with that unshakable intensity, as if weighing how much truth she could handle. Then, finally, his voice came, quiet and steady, "Someone who shouldn't care. But I do." The words struck her deeper than she expected. Lena's pulse fluttered. She wanted to demand more, but part of her feared what answers might come. A sudden crash echoed behind them, an overturned trash bin at the far end of the alley. She spun around, startled, but the man's hand caught her wrist, grounding her. His grip was firm yet careful, heat radiating through the storm-chilled night. "Not safe here," he muttered, scanning the darkness. His posture shifted, protective, alert. Lena tried to pull back. "Not safe because of you." His gaze flicked to hers, sharp and unflinching. "Not safe because of them." She followed his eyes into the shadows, but saw nothing. Only the endless curtain of rain. Yet his certainty made her skin prickle. Whoever or whatever he meant, she knew he wasn't lying. Without warning, he guided her deeper into the alley, his hand brushing against her back as though he couldn't help it. She should have resisted, should have demanded explanations, but the warmth of his touch spread through her like fire, silencing the protests in her mind. They stopped beneath the sagging frame of an old iron staircase. The storm hissed around them, but here, tucked beneath rusted metal and dripping gutters, the world seemed to slow. "You don't even know me," she said, her voice unsteady. His lips tilted into that almost smile again. "I know enough." "Enough for what?" His silence was louder than any answer. The way he looked at her spoke volumes, like she was the one thing he'd been searching for, the one thing he wasn't supposed to find. Lena's chest tightened. She wanted to step away, to clear her head, but every time she tried, she found herself leaning closer instead. The storm blurred into background noise, every drop of rain only heightening the electricity between them. Her fingers twitched at her side, aching to touch him, to prove he was real. She hated herself for wanting it, for craving the nearness of a stranger who smelled of rain and danger. "Your trouble," she breathed, half to herself. His gaze softened, though his jaw tightened as if holding back something fierce. "So are you." The admission hung between them, daring, undeniable. For a moment, time stopped. The city, the storm, the danger, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the space between them, and how it felt ready to shatter. She didn't know who leaned in first. Maybe it was both of them. But suddenly his breath was warm against her cheek, his lips a whisper away from hers. Her pulse thundered. Every ounce of logic screamed to push him away. Instead, she closed her eyes. And then he pulled back. Just enough. His hand dropped from her wrist, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. "Not yet," he murmured, more to himself than to her. The loss of his nearness made her ache in ways she didn't understand. She opened her eyes, rain still dripping from her lashes. "Why stop?" His gaze burned with everything he wasn't saying. "Because if I start, I won't be able to stop." The words struck her harder than any touch. Heat flared through her, stronger than the storm's bite. Lena didn't know whether to run, to demand answers, or to give in to the pull that bound her to him. But one thing was certain, the rain-soaked alley had already changed everything. The storm didn't let up. Rain pelted the rooftops above, rattling gutters and filling the alley with the endless hiss of water. Yet Lena hardly noticed any more. All she could think about was the man in front of her, his words, his nearness, the warning he carried like a secret too heavy to hold. "You can't stay here," he said, his voice edged with urgency now. "Then tell me why," she demanded. Her heart still raced from the almost kiss, her body caught between fear and desire. "Who's after me? What storm am I supposed to have walked into?" He hesitated, jaw tight. For the first time, she sensed a crack in his composure. Whatever truth he was holding back, it weighed on him. "You don't need to know," he said finally. "Not yet. Just trust me." Lena laughed bitterly, though the sound came out weaker than she meant. "Trust you? I don't even know your name." He studied her, rain dripping from his lashes, before answering in a low murmur. "Adrian." The name curled around her like smoke. Strong, sharp, yet haunting. She repeated it silently, tasting the sound, as though saying it aloud might draw him closer. Another noise echoed down the alley, a metallic scrape, deliberate, too heavy to be the storm. Lena stiffened. Adrian's head snapped toward the sound, his body going taut like a drawn bow. "Stay behind me," he ordered. She almost argued, but something in his tone silenced her. This wasn't just some stranger in a rain-soaked coat. He moved like someone trained, someone who had lived through dangers she couldn't imagine. Shapes flickered at the far end of the alley, three figures, blurred by the sheets of rain. They moved slowly, deliberately, as though they knew Adrian was watching. "Who are they?" Lena whispered. Adrian's voice was low, firm. "The reason you can't be out here alone." The figures drew closer, shadows stretching across the puddles, until the glint of something metallic caught the dim neon spill from the street. "A knife. Maybe more." Fear knotted in Lena's chest. But when she looked at Adrian, she saw no fear. Only determination and something fierce, protective, blazing beneath his calm. "Run when I tell you," he said. "I'm not leaving you." His hand caught hers, strong and warm despite the storm. The touch jolted through her like fire. His eyes met hers, intense, unyielding. "Do you trust me?" She wanted to say no. She wanted to cling to reason. But instead, her lips parted, and the truth slipped out. "Yes." The smallest flicker of relief crossed his face. Then he released her hand and stepped forward, placing himself between her and the advancing figures. The rain hammered harder, drowning the world in chaos. Adrian's coat clung to his shoulders, his stance broad, commanding. He looked like he belonged to the storm, as though it bent around him, drawing power from his resolve. One of the figures called out, voice muffled by the rain. "She's not yours to keep, Adrian." Lena froze. The words twisted through her mind like a knife. Not his to keep? How did they know her? Adrian's voice was calm, but carried an edge sharp enough to cut steel. "She's under my protection now. Leave." The figures didn't stop. They fanned out, blocking the alley's exit, their movements predatory. Adrian glanced back at Lena, just for a moment. The storm painted his features in streaks of light and shadow, every line of him tense with control. "Stay close to the wall," he told her. "And whatever happens, don't look away." Her throat tightened, but she nodded. Something inside her believed that as long as he stood there, the storm couldn't take her. The first figure lunged. Adrian moved with a speed that stunned her. One moment he was still, the next he was a blur of motion, sidestepping the attack and driving the man into the wall with a force that rattled the pipes above. The others closed in, But Adrian didn't falter. His movements were precise, efficient like a dance in the rain, sharp and controlled. Lena couldn't look away, even though her pulse screamed for her to. It wasn't just the danger that made her tremble. It was the way he fought, not like someone chasing violence, but like someone protecting what mattered most. Protecting her. When the last figure crumpled into the shadows, groaning, Adrian straightened, breath steady despite the struggle. His gaze found hers, piercing even through the storm. "Now you see why you can't be alone," he said softly. Lena's lips parted, but no words came. She was shivering, not from the rain, not from the fear, but from the way his eyes burned into hers, fierce and unrelenting. Adrian stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair onto her face. He lifted his hand, as if to touch her cheek, then hesitated, the restraint trembling in his jaw. "Lena," he murmured, her name tasting different in his voice, dangerous and tender all at once. "You don't know how much trouble you're in. Or how far I'd go to keep you safe." Her heart pounded. She should have asked questions. She should have demanded answers. But instead, she only whispered the truth, clawing up her throat. "Then don't stop this time." His breath caught. The storm raged on. And for a heartbeat, it felt like the alley itself held its breath, waiting to see what Adrian would do. The alley stank of rust and wet concrete, littered with the groans of the men Adrian had left behind. Lena clutched her coat to her chest, her breath sharp and uneven. Every part of her screamed that she should run far from this stranger. Yet every glance at him, standing tall in the rain, made her feet stay rooted. Adrian's gaze swept the shadows, his chest rising and falling with measured calm. Then he reached for her hand, curling his fingers firmly around hers. "We can't stay," he said. "More will come." Lena's pulse leapt at the warmth of his grip. She wanted to ask who they were, why they wanted her, but the look in his eyes silenced her questions. For now, escape mattered more than answers. He tugged her into motion, leading her deeper into the maze of back streets. Their footsteps splashed through puddles, the storm blurring neon signs into streaks of color. She stumbled once on the slick pavement, but Adrian steadied her instantly, his arm wrapping around her waist. The touch lingered a heartbeat too long before he let go, and she almost wished he hadn't. "Adrian," she panted as they turned a corner, "what's happening?" "Who were they?" "People you don't want to know," he replied, voice low and taut. "They been watching you." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Watching me? Why?" His jaw flexed. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the rooftops, guiding her beneath an overhang where the rain beat like drums overhead. Only then did he look at her fully, the stormlight carving shadows across his face. "Because you've seen something you shouldn't have," he said finally. "And now they think you're a threat." Lena blinked, confused. "Seen what?" "I don't." She stopped. Images flickered in her mind, the strange meeting she'd stumbled upon last week in an abandoned warehouse, the briefcase exchanged under dim lights, the faces she couldn't forget no matter how she tried. She had told herself it was nothing. A bad dream. Her stomach dropped. "You mean, that night?" Adrian's silence was answer enough. The storm howled, shaking metal signs and rattling glass. She pressed back against the wall, her pulse racing. "I didn't tell anyone. I swear, I didn't." "I know," he said softly, stepping closer. His nearness cut through the cold like fire. "But they don't care. You're a loose thread in their fabric, Lena. And loose threads get cut." Her throat tightened. The truth was more terrifying than anything she had imagined. Yet even as fear knotted in her chest, she couldn't ignore the steadiness of Adrian's gaze, the way he spoke her name like a promise. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. For the first time, his composure wavered. His eyes darkened, his breath shallow. "Because I couldn't walk away. Not from you." The words tangled around her heart, pulling it tight. Rain dripped from her lashes as she searched his face, trying to decide if she could believe him or if she even cared. Before she could answer, shouts echoed in the distance. More footsteps. More danger. Adrian swore under his breath, then grabbed her hand again. "Come on." They darted through another alley, weaving between dumpsters and sagging fences, until they burst out onto a street lit only by the glow of a flickering sign. A boarded-up diner stood across the way, its awning torn but still intact. Adrian pushed the door, and to Lena's surprise, it gave way with a groan. Inside, the diner smelled of dust and old grease. The windows were streaked with rain, the booths torn, the silence thick except for their ragged breaths. Adrian secured the door with a chair, then turned to her. In the dim light, his face was harder, shadows clinging to his jaw. Yet his eyes, when they met hers, burned with the same dangerous pull as before. "You're not safe out there," he said. "For tonight, you stay with me." Lena's chest tightened. The storm outside rattled the walls, but it was nothing compared to the storm building inside her. She wanted to argue, to cling to her independence. But when she looked at him, wet hair clinging to his temples, rain sliding down his throat, shoulders tense from carrying more than he let show, she only nodded. Silence filled the space between them, thick and electric. Adrian's gaze dropped to her lips for the briefest second before flicking back to her eyes. "Lena," he murmured, her name barely more than a breath. "I meant what I said. I shouldn't care. But I do. Too much." The storm boomed, shaking the diner's windows. She stepped closer without thinking, her pulse racing, her voice trembling with both fear and something deeper. "Then don't hold back." For a moment, Adrian froze, caught between restraint and desire. Then his hand brushed her cheek, tentative, reverent. The warmth of his touch spread through her like fire, chasing away the cold of the rain. The storm outside raged on. But here, in the ruined diner, a different storm was about to break. The storm pressed against the diner's walls like a living thing, its howl sneaking through cracks in the boarded windows. The air smelled of wetwood and rust, heavy with silence. Lena sat in one of the torn booths, hugging herself, her damp clothes clinging to her skin. Adrian paced the room, a shadow in motion, every line of his body taut with vigilance. She couldn't take her eyes off him. The way his shoulders rolled as he moved, the quiet intensity in his stride, the restless glance he cast toward every sound outside, it was both comforting and maddening. "You're not going to sleep, are you?" she asked softly. He stopped, his profile sharp against the dim glow of the neon that bled faintly through the rain-streaked window. "Not tonight." Her lips curved into a tired, half-bitter smile. "Because you're protecting me." His gaze flicked to her, steady, unreadable. "Because they won't stop until they find you." The words settled in her chest like lead. She traced a finger along the cracked vinyl of the booth, then looked up at him again. "So you'll just keep me running? Forever?" Adrian's jaw tightened. He crossed the room slowly, the storm light flickering across his face. When he stopped before her, he rested his hands on the back of the booth, leaning closer. The nearness made her pulse jump. Until it's over, he said, his voice low, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you alive. Her throat tightened. Even if it costs you. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, raw and fleeting, before he masked it. He straightened, pulling back as though distance could shield him from the question. It already has. The quiet confession twisted in her chest. She wanted to press, to ask what scars he carried, but the weight in his tone told her he wasn't ready. Not yet. The silence between them grew thick again, but this time it carried something else, an undercurrent of heat, of closeness neither of them could deny. The storm outside battered the walls, yet here, in the dim diner, the air itself seemed charged, alive. Lena rose from the booth slowly, every nerve in her body aware of the way Adrian's eyes followed her. She stepped closer until she could hear the roughness of his breath, feel the warmth radiating from him. You don't have to carry it all alone, she said gently. His lips curved not into a smile, but into something torn between desire and restraint. If I let you in, Lena, you'll see things you can't unsee. Then show me, she whispered. Stop protecting me from the truth. Stop protecting me from you. For a moment, Adrian was stone. Still. Silent. Then, with a sharp exhale, he closed the distance between them. His hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her damp skin as though memorizing her. His eyes locked on hers, burning with everything he had tried to hold back. This is a mistake, he murmured. Maybe, she breathed. But it doesn't feel like one. The storm cracked overhead, thunder rattling the walls, and at last he gave in. His lips found hers, not gentle, not hesitant this time, but fierce, desperate, like he had been starving for her since the moment their eyes met in the alley. Lena clutched his coat, pulling him closer, the taste of rain still on his mouth. Every thought of danger, of fear, melted beneath the heat of his kiss. The world outside could crash and burn, but here, pressed against him, she felt alive in a way she never had before. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, his forehead rested against hers. His voice was rough, ragged. I swore I wouldn't do this, he whispered. I swore I wouldn't drag you into my mess. You already did, she said, her chest heaving. And I'm not letting you push me away. Adrian closed his eyes, the war inside him written in every line of his face. For the first time, he looked less like the unshakable protector and more like a man haunted, vulnerable, torn. The storm raged outside, but between them, a different storm had already broken. The kiss still lingered on Lena's lips when a sound shattered the fragile silence of the diner. A crunch of boots on wet pavement. The groan of the wind wasn't enough to hide it. Adrian stiffened instantly, his body tensing like a predator catching scent of arrival. They found us, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Lena's stomach dropped. Here. Adrian pressed a finger to his lips, silencing her. His eyes swept the room, sharp and calculating. He moved to the window, pulling back a sliver of the warped blinds. Outside, shadows shifted against the storm. 2. 3. Maybe more. He turned back, his voice low, urgent. We need to move. Now. Before she could respond, glass shattered. A rock hurled through the boarded window, spraying splinters across the floor. Lena flinched, but Adrian was already pulling her behind the counter, shielding her with his body. Shouts followed, muffled by the storm, and then the thud of boots closing in. Adrian's jaw hardened. They won't stop. Not until he cut himself off, shaking his head. Stay low. Follow me. He led her through the kitchen, their footsteps quick but silent across the greasy tiles. The air smelled of rust and old oil, the storm rattling the back door. Adrian pushed it open, scanning the alley behind the diner. Empty for now. Go, he urged, guiding her out. They slipped into the night, rain soaking them instantly. Lena clutched his hand, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Every shadow seemed alive, every gust of wind a warning. Behind them, the diner door slammed open. Voices shouted, chasing. Run. Adrian's voice was sharp, commanding, yet threaded with something protective, desperate. They sprinted down the slick alley, water splashing up their legs, their breaths ragged. Lena's lungs burned, but she didn't dare slow down. Adrian was at her side, his hand never letting go of hers, his strength pulling her forward when her legs faltered. Shots cracked through the storm. Not bullets too sharp, too bright. Sparks exploded against the wet brick where the blast hit. Lena gasped, stumbling. What was that?" she cried. Adrian's grip tightened. "Something worse than you think." They turned a corner, bursting into a narrow passage where the storm funneled like a tunnel of sound. Adrian shoved her against the wall, his body shielding hers as another shot seared past, close enough to make the air tremble. Lena's chest heaved, her back pressed to the cold bricks. Adrian was so close she could feel the heat of him even through the rain. His voice was low, fierce. "They won't stop until you're gone. Do you understand? You're not some random witness, Lena. You're the piece they can't control." Her breath caught. "What does that even mean?" His jaw clenched, his eyes blazing. "It means you're more important than you realize. And they'll burn this city down to erase you." The words shook her more than the danger around them. But what shook her most was the way he looked at her, as though he'd lay down his life to make sure that didn't happen. Footsteps pounded closer. Adrian grabbed her face, his wet fingers trembling against her skin. "Do you trust me?" he demanded. Her pulse thundered. She didn't hesitate. "Yes." Something in his eyes broke, then something restrained, locked away. He kissed her, fierce and unyielding, as though it might be their last. The storm crashed around them, but Lena clung to him, drowning in the heat of his mouth, the strength of his arms. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "Then stay behind me. No matter what." The figures appeared at the mouth of the alley, shadows in the rain, weapons glinting with unnatural light. Adrian stepped forward, rain sliding down his face, his stance broad, unmovable. The storm seemed to bend around him, lightning flashing overhead as if called by his will. For the first time, Lena saw it clearly, Adrian wasn't just a man caught in something bigger. He was part of it. And now, so was she. The alley shook with thunder as the shadows closed in. Rain blurred their outlines, but the glow of their weapons lit their faces cold, merciless, determined. Lena's breath hitched, her back pressed to the wall. She had never felt so small. Adrian stepped forward, his shoulders squared, every muscle taut. For a moment, he looked less like a man and more like a force of nature, as if the storm itself had chosen him as its vessel. "Adrian," Lena whispered, her voice trembling, "who are you really?" His head turned slightly, just enough for his eyes to meet hers. In them burned something fierce and unyielding, but also heavy with sorrow. "The one who swore to stop them," he said. "Even if it kills me." The figures advanced, their leader raising his weapon. "Step aside," Adrian. She doesn't belong to you. She belongs to us. Something snapped inside Lena at those words. Belongs. As if she were a prize to be claimed. She straightened, her fear hardening into defiance. I don't belong to anyone, she shouted, though her voice cracked against the storm. The leader sneered, his eyes narrowing. Then you'll disappear. The shot came, bright and searing through the rain. Lena gasped, bracing for pain, but it never reached her. Adrian was there, his arm raised, the blast colliding with an unseen force that rippled through the air like lightning striking water. The energy dissolved, scattering sparks into the storm. Lena stared, stunned. What was that? Adrian didn't look back. His voice was rough, heavy. The part of me I never wanted you to see. Lightning split the sky, illuminating him fully. For an instant, the rain itself seemed to bend around him, shimmering with energy that pulsed through his veins. His coat clung to him, but beneath the fabric she could see faint lines glowing faintly, like cracks of light under skin. The men hesitated now, uncertain, but not retreating. Lena, Adrian called, his tone sharp, urgent. You have to go. If you stay, they'll use you against me. Her heart pounded. Everything in her screamed to run, to flee this madness, this storm, this man who wasn't just a man. But her legs wouldn't move. Her eyes locked on him, and all she saw was the same Adrian who had shielded her in the alley, who had fought to keep her safe, who had kissed her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. No, she said firmly, her voice steady despite the chaos. I'm not leaving you. His expression broke, torn between fury and longing. Lena, you don't understand. I understand enough, she cut him off. You think I'm just something to protect, something fragile. But I'm here because I choose to be. With you. The words struck him harder than any blast. For a moment, the storm between them was louder than the one around them. The attackers surged forward. Adrian turned, unleashing the storm. Energy flared from him, bright and raw, tearing through the rain like thunder made flesh. The men staggered, their weapons faltering under the force of his power. Lena pressed against the wall, shielding her face, yet even through the blinding light, she watched him. The storm moved with him, through him, as though he were both man and tempest. One by one, the shadows fell, retreating into the downpour until only silence and the endless hiss of rain remained. Adrian swayed, his breath ragged, the glow beneath his skin flickering. He turned to her, his expression weary, vulnerable. This is what I am, he said hoarsely. This is the truth I tried to keep from you. I'm not just a man, Lena. I'm the storm they wanted to control. And if you stay, you'll be in its path. She stepped forward, the puddles rippling beneath her boots. Her hand reached for his face, brushing wet strands of hair from his eyes. Then let it come, she whispered. I'd rather stand in the storm with you than hide from it alone. Adrian's chest heaved, his eyes burning with something between relief and disbelief. He caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek, his lips trembling against her palm. The storm above rumbled, softer now, as if bowing to them. And in the rain-soaked alley where it all began, Lena knew the truth, the storm hadn't ruined her life. It had given her Adrian. And no matter what came next, she would not let go.